Good day or good evening, whatever time it is at the time you're watching this video. Hi guys, I'm going to go ahead and start with a little bit of a story time here. I had opened up myself to spirit as I drove my kiddo off to school this morning to see what would come through for the collective, knowing that I was going to come back here after that little chore and record. And the first thing that kind of popped in my mind was Eros and Thanatos, and how Eros kind of represents like the pulling of the heartstrings and magnetism to things that one's soul is passionate about. And it has to do with like life path and burning desire and being comforted, being comforted by doing the things that one really, really loves to do. And the reasoning behind one doing those things. And then Thanatos represents the negative thoughts that come through, especially the ego mind, and how it's kind of like a protection mechanism when there's like a big change that's going to occur, and this kind of vibration of Thanatos comes through and kind of tries to talk one off of a cliff, is basically the perspective that Spirit was giving me. Anyways, after that occurred, I heard the words, "It's when you can't see it the most is when it will appear." And I was kind of fascinated at this point because that sounded like a riddle, and I absolutely love riddles. Spirit knows this very well. But to my shocking surprise, after my daughter gets out of the car and runs up to school, I realize there's something wonky going on with the traffic in front of me. And I overheard the traffic director at the school say, "The lights just went out." And I'm like, what? And I looked up, and literally the stoplights were blackened. They weren't even on. And I was like, whoa, that's weird, So I go to make my turn to head back home, and I realize that the major intersection in front of me had the same problem. The lights were completely black, and there was chaos happening because nobody knew what to do. And I was like, oh my God, I wonder if something happened to the power grid. And so I looked over at the store that was on the side of the road, and the lights were on. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fine. So it was just the stoplights. And so I said, F this. I flipped the UE and I took back roads home because I did not want to mess with major intersections with zero lights and silly people that do not understand what to do in circumstances such as that. I just saw danger all over it. So I took the back roads home, and here I am. But I thought that was very, very interesting when that appeared right after I heard those words. It's when you cannot see the most is when it will appear. Just thought that was quite strange and interesting and very synchronistic. So, wow. I felt the power within my solar plexus area for sure when that happened. I was quite astonished. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and reach over for my wisdom oracles, get a couple cards going, and see what exactly all this is speaking of here. When you can't see it the most. The never-ending story. That's exactly kind of what this feels like. It feels like a very strange story. And the fact that she's covering her face there, I'm going to try to make it so you could see that. She's covering her face there, which kind of reiterates that saying. when you can't see it the most. And there's this like dial underneath her within this hourglass that speaks of love, has yes or no. So that's kind of that Eros Thanatos energy that I was picking up on as well. And there's also a mirror here, and I think I can almost see a face in there too. So it's kind of like giving reflecting, mirroring, down is up is down kind of vibe. 3-7 might be very significant to you as well, or the number 73. But if you add those together, you get 10, which is an ending and a new beginning, right? Just when it seems that there is no end to something, the never-ending story, you can't see the ending in sight. And that's when it truly appears, is what I'm hearing. Because in order for something to appear new, something else must end. This has very cryptic vibes. It's very cryptid, very coded, very riddly. Why? Oh, that's kind of cool. I did not see the numbers. I was like, where's the numbers on the card? I literally, it wasn't there until I realized that I couldn't see the number, and then it appeared. That's quite interesting. Number 31. Something's telling me to pull this up closer so that you can kind of see the image better. There's this figure that's reaching down to a book that has wings, and there's question marks everywhere. And we have yin, but it was upside down. Quite interesting as well. That's that feminine energy, but I feel like it needs to stay in reverse for a reason. Something being flipped upside down. What's down is up and up is down. Interesting that I said it's kind of sounds like a coded message, because I started this morning out watching this show on YouTube about decoding whale clicks. And they thought that they had it like all figured out, right? And that kind of plays into this, like, it's when you don't see it the most is when it appears, actually. So I think Spirit was already starting to communicate even before I had opened myself up on purpose with the show that I was watching. Maybe I'll link it in the description below, because it's quite interesting. But the discovery of how the whales communicated was kind of accidental. It was, I think, a marine biologist was sitting in his office and he was listening to it, but he was studying the jellyfish that he was seeing, or that he went and studied for a while. He had it up on his computer, the footage. And in the background, you could hear the clicking of the whales. And I had even said too, when it shared what it sounded like, I was like, that almost sounds like Morse code. And later on, some woman was walking by this guy's office, and come to find out, she couldn't help herself. She overheard, and she stuck her head in his office and said, that sounds like Morse code. And I was like, holy shit, that was cool. I'm like, yeah, it totally does. And so they learned a whole nother way to decode how the whales were communicating under the water via clicks, and how the clicks kind of refer to different letters, and different sayings or whatever they're communicating about. I'd only gotten about halfway through the show before I had to do my morning responsibilities with my kiddo. But there's definitely something there about decoding something and how it may seem like it's never ending, but the ending is so close that it's hard to see the outcome, you know? So we've got 3 solid cards out here on the table. I'm going to go ahead and set this deck down for a minute. It's almost like a search as to why something is occurring, or maybe why not. It's very hidden, and yet it's like that vibe of being hidden in plain sight. And with Eros and Thanatos, what I get with that is that the more the heartstrings are followed and the more Thanatos is not listened to, the more things are going to come into view. I reached for the book and it had flopped open to a card that's not on the table, but I thought that that was kind of cool after what I just said. It's the Here and Now card. And it says right here, being fully present in the moment, living one day at a time. And that's kind of the key to the code here, I feel. Living in the present moment and being present and aware. You just kind of like that guy on the video I was talking about, how he was in the present moment and he was studying something completely different when something hidden just kind of appears out of nowhere. Like that woman coming in and saying, hey, that sounds like Morse code, and it triggers this whole like study and this whole revision of the decoding of how whales talk under the water. Interesting. The never-ending story card in the book, the essential meanings of this card is self-criticism, the wounded ego, and unnecessary dramas, which is exactly what Thanatos, kind of represents here. With the fact that Eros and Thanatos were the first 2 that kind of popped into my mind as I intentionally opened up to spirit for this message. And the vibe that I'm getting off of that, especially with the yin card being in reverse as well, there's like a letting go, a necessary letting go of this kind of energy. This like self-deprecating, self-critical notion of kind of denying the possibilities that your heart is like pulling you towards. And this is pretty crazy because the Y card, the essential meanings is motives, driving intention, the power of knowing the why. But the motives driving intention, that's exactly what Eros kind of represents. It's that driving force, that magnetism of your heartstrings, that driving force to want to do things that inspire you on a soul level. And there's also that want of knowing why that drive is there. And I do believe that's why I had opened the book to that be in the moment and to not really worry yourself with the why, because the why will then just kind of suddenly appear the more that you are in the moment and following your passions fully. The why will just kind of already be implicated. And as far as the yin in reverse, yin upright, it stands for the feminine principle of receptivity and allowing someone else to make the first move. And the fact that it's in reverse, I feel like it's letting you know that you are the one that is supposed to make the first move. in whatever this is here. And not really like waiting for it, if that makes sense. Something is going to be brought on by the actions that you take rather than the stagnation, rather than the holding back, kind of like that Thanatos energy where it holds one back. My eye was brought down to the number 31 on the Y card, and Spirit started talking about the months that end with 31 days. So that might be something significant to you. Maybe you were born on like the 31st day of a month. And Spirit is speaking about the rarity of that. Once again, it sounds very cryptid in my mind. But there's like a rarity around the 31. My mind also wants to try and flip the number into the 13. 13 for me stands for divine feminine energy. Perhaps you were born on like a Friday the 13th too. There's a rarity there with that as well. I know there's 7 months out of the calendar year that have 31 days. So on an average, not really a rarity there, but there's that number 737. Wow, okay. The numerology is starting to pour in now. Spirit had taken my eye up to an index card that I have taped on my wall just now, and it's one that says positive thinking expresses and negative thinking represses. And that couldn't be any more true, especially for the Eros Thanatos kind of energy too that this reading started out with. And so I feel like Spirit is just coming through and letting you know that the more you feed into the positivity of the Eros vibe, the further away you will get from that Thanatos vibe. And the clearer things are going to become for you. And this cycle here of the never-ending story kind of vibe will begin to shift, and things will begin to become anew, and the pathway will become much more clearer. But there's this energy of needing to be within the moment and kind of like not focusing on the outcome, not focusing on the why, and then the why will appear, is what I'm getting off of this entire message here. And taking the actions that are needed daily and not kind of like just waiting for the actions to take place themselves, if that makes sense. So yeah, this was quite an interesting reading here. And I hope that whoever it was for out in the collective, that it had helped you. It was very riddly, very codey. So I hope that this encrypted message reached who it needed to reach, who it was for, and I hope that it helped in any regard. Thank you all for being here on Mind and Spirit's channel. And I'm feeling the energies lifting, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this one here. I truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you would like to contribute to the growth of this channel, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Like and comment. I love speaking to all of you here in the comment section. And until next time, we love you. Bye.